Once fifth graders have a good understanding of their decimal place value, how to read and write them, as well as compare them, we move on to performing different operations on our decimals. So, the first two operations we're going to start with is adding and subtracting decimals. As you can see, I have my multi-digit decimal equation, and I want to make sure my decimal points are lined up when we are adding and subtracting. This makes sure that all the place values are in the correct spot and aligned with each other. So I have 15 and 46 hundredths plus 36 and 27 hundredths. I have my decimal points lined up, which ensures that our hundredths place is lined up, our tenths place, and so on. The first thing you want to do is bring your decimal point down into your answer so you don't forget about it. Then you're going to start with the smallest place value like you normally would add. In this equation, my smallest place value is going to be my hundredths place. So I can start with 6 plus 7. That gives me 13. Carry my 1. 4 plus 2 gives me 6. Plus 1 is 7. 5 plus 6 is 11. Carry my tens place. 1 plus 3 is 4. Plus another 1 is 5, to give me a final answer of 51 and 73 hundredths. In our next example, we have a subtraction problem. Again, I want to make sure my decimal points are lined up together. I have 75 and 59 hundredths minus 43 and 67 hundredths. Again, I want to start in the smallest place value, which is the hundredths place. 9 minus 7 gives me 2. Then I have 5 minus 6. I can't take 6 away from 5, so I need to go to the next place value and borrow. So this 5 is going to turn into a 4, and this 5 is going to turn into a 15. So 15 minus 6 gives me 9. 4 minus 3 gives me 1. And 7 minus 4 gives me 3. The final answer of 31 and 92 hundredths. After we have worked on adding and subtracting decimals, we move on to multiplying our decimals. When we multiply decimals, we work with the traditional algorithm that students are familiar with when we worked on it with whole numbers. In our first example, I have 237 times 58 hundredths. So I have this set up with my 3-digit number on top, my 2-digit number on the bottom. Notice there are not any decimal points to line up like when we're adding and subtracting decimals. That is not necessary when we are multiplying them. Once I have my problem set up, I'm actually just going to ignore this decimal point. I'm going to solve it as if it were whole numbers and ignore my decimal point until the end. So if I pretend this is a 58, I want to make sure I start with my ones place. So I'm going to start with my 8, and I'm going to multiply my 8 times 7. 8 times 7 is going to give me 56. So I'm going to leave my 6, carry my 5. 8 times 3 gives me 24. 24 plus 5 gives me 29. Drop my 9, carry my 2. 8 times 2 is 16. 16 plus 2 is 18. I don't have any other numbers, so I'm going to bring my entire 18 down. I'm just going to cross those out so I don't use them when I move on to my 5. And again, before we move on to the 5, if I'm pretending this is a 50, I have to add my placeholder, and then I'm going to repeat the same steps. So 5 times 7 gives me 35. Drop my 5, carry my 3. 5 times 3 is 15. 15 plus 3 is 18. Carry my 1. And again, I'm making sure my digits are lined up. 5 times 2 is 10. Plus 1 is 11. No other numbers. Drop the whole 11. And then I'm going to add these two together. 6 plus 0 is 6. 9 plus 5 is 14. Carry my 1. My 8 plus 8 is 16, plus 1 is 17, 1 plus 1 is 2, plus my other 1 is 3, and then I have 1 plus 0. Now that we have our product, I need to go back because I need to put my decimal point back into my answer. Since we ignored it at first, we treated them like whole numbers, I need to now figure out where to put my decimal point. So I want to start on the outside of this 8. Because I treated it as a whole number, I need to count how many jumps in to my decimal point. So I have 1, 2 jumps. I'm going to take that product and I'm also going to make 2 jumps. 1, 2, and then drop my decimal point. So a final answer of 137 and 46 hundredths. Let's try another example. So again, I have my bigger number on top. It has more digits, it is larger, and then my single digit number on the bottom. 519 and 6 hundredths times 4. Again, I'm going to ignore this decimal point at first and pretend it is a whole number, and then I will go back and put my decimal point in the final answer. So I'm going to take my 4. 4 times 6 is 24. Drop my 4. Carry my 2. 4 times 0 is 0. Plus 2 is 2. 4 times 9 is 36. Drop my 6. Carry my 3. 4 times 1 is 4. Plus 3 gives me 7. And 4 times 5 is 20. I don't have any other numbers, so I'm going to drop my entire 20. And then I'm going to go back. I need to figure out how many jumps to move in order to put my decimal point into my product. 1, 2, here's 2 jumps. I'm going to start here. 1 jump, 2 jumps, insert my decimal, and then I can rewrite my answer as 2,076 and 24 hundredths. So again, we're taking our prior knowledge of multiplying, applying it to decimals, and just adding that one extra step in when I have to count how many jumps to my decimal point to put it back into my product. The last operation we work on with our decimals is dividing decimals. Dividing decimals has one more step to ensure that we get our correct quotient. I'm going to start with our first example. So I have 23 and 76 hundredths divided by 4. Now, the number inside our little division house is our dividend. The number outside is our divisor. When we are dividing, our divisor always needs to be a whole number. If it's not a whole number, we have to use our multiplying with powers of 10 in order to turn it into a whole number. So with this first example, my 4 is already a whole number. The second thing I want to do, take this decimal point and I want to bring it up into my quotient right above where it is. Once I have ensured those two things, my divisor is a whole number, I lined up my decimal point in my quotient, I'm going to divide like we normally would. So I'm going to start with my tens place. So 4 cannot go into 2, so I'm going to put my 0. If we follow the steps of division, 4 times 0 gives us 0. Then we want to subtract, bring down our next number. Now we're working with 23. So I need to think, how many groups of 4 can I fit into 23? So 4 times 5 gives me 20. 4 times 5, 20. Subtract, I am left with 3. Bring down my 7. And then I'm going to repeat, how many groups of 4 can I fit into 37? That would be 9 groups of 4. 9 times 4 is 36. And then I'm going to subtract. 37 minus 36 is 1. And then I'm going to bring down my last digit. 4 groups of 4 fit into 16. 4 times 4 is 16, and I am left with 0. And here is my final answer, 5 and 94 hundredths. My next example, I have 7 and 224 thousandths divided by 8 hundredths. So my divisor right now is not a whole number, and we need it to be a whole number. So I can take my 8 hundredths, I can multiply it by 100, and turn that into a whole number. So if I multiply my 8 times 100, that's going to make my decimal point do 2 jumps to the right to turn it into 8. If I do that to my divisor, I also have to do that to my dividend. So I'm going to take my decimal point and I'm going to make 2 jumps, just multiplying it by 100, and now my decimal point has moved, and then I want to make sure it's lined up in my quotient. Once I have done that, I now have 8. I now have my whole number for my divisor, and I have my decimal point in my quotient lined up. I can again divide like I normally would. So 8 cannot go into 7, so I'm going to put my 0, bring down my 2, and I can fit 9 groups of 8 into 72, because 8 times 9 gives me 72. Left with 0, bring down my next digit. 8 cannot fit into 2. I have to still put my 0 here. That does trick some students, so make sure if you cannot fit your divisor into this number, you have to put a 0 up there. And then I'm going to, again, if I follow the steps, 8 times 0 is 0, 2 minus 0 is 0, bring down my 4. 2 minus 0 is 2, excuse me. Bring down my 4. And then I want to see how many groups of 8 I can fit into 24. I can fit 3 groups of 8. 24 minus 24 gives me 0 for a final answer of 90 and 3